explain in a detailed way how important is this meeting. We are in the 4th year of the war in Ukraine, and Ukraine is buying the precious time for us every day, paying with the blood. So it would be highly irresponsible to waste this time and to have long hours discussions without the clear outcome. So I think we have two very important proposals on the table. First of all, I appreciate the efforts of the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for this 800 billion euro plan. I think this is a step forwards comparing with the situation we are now. And it would be really high assistance for my country, because we have very ambitious target in my country to spend for defense from 5 to 6% of our GDP. It means a lot, but for that we need more flexible treatment of defense spending while calculating the fiscal deficit according to economic and growth and stability plan. Then 20 billion euros financial package for Ukraine. You are smiling. I think this is very serious, because Lithuania is committed to contribute and to pay our part to this fund, because we are committed also to support Ukraine by 0.25% of our GDP each year. We calculated if our countries will commit to pay the same amount, Ukraine would receive 43 billion euros, and this is a lot. And this is really what they need right now. For me, it's also important to support Ukraine politically. So I proposed to set up the orientational date of Ukraine's membership in European Union. For example, 2030, January 1st. It will be not a legal definition, but it will be our political commitment to set the path and to send very clear guidelines to our friends Ukrainians, which need our support, and not only military, financial support, but also political support.
What could it also look like for Hungary's comments yesterday?
Sorry?
Macron's comments yesterday.
I think it's a very interesting idea, and we see to this proposal with high expectations, because, you know, nuclear umbrella would serve as really very serious deterrence towards Russia. And it is very important to use this opportunity, all opportunities to increase our resilience, and especially in the eastern flank, because eastern flank is exposed to different kind of threats. And this is my idea, to focus more on the eastern flank, because we are exposed to...
się zmieni, jeśli chodzi o determinację Europy w sprawie zbrojeń i przemysłu obronnego i gotowości do podjęcia tego wyzwania, jakie rzuciła Rosja całemu światu.
So easy to have the common border with aggressive states like Belarus or Russian Federation, but we do our best, and we need the assistance of our partners too.
How concerned are you that Orban might jeopardize
Well, we will see. We will see, but you know, we have to take decisions. No matter are there one or two countries which are opposing every time. And we have to look for possibilities to to implement decisions, because otherwise the history will penalize us, and we will pay very high cost for this inability to take these decisions. Unfortunately, it's lasting too long, our inability to take decisions. And now it's a time. Now it's a time, not tomorrow, not after tomorrow. Now it's a time. Yes.
Do you really think Europe has financial means to fill the vacuum left by the U.S.?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Do you really think Europe has the financial means to fill the vacuum left by the U.S.?
I think it is possible, but of course we have to accumulate our financial resources, and as an economist I can say that it's not so easy, but it is doable. And this is our responsibility, because right now we have to fill, as you mentioned, the gap which exists because of the new status quo in the United States. But this is the time to show for Europe, are we a global player or we are just a club of discussions? Thank you.
Which country is still blocking discussions?
You know,
Hello, good morning. I expect today swift actions and really clear decisions, because I'm really glad that at least the European Commission has proposed 5 points for defense spending, because we have been, as Latvia, talking and asking for such a decisions already quite a long time before. We are supporting Ukraine, giving 0.25% of our GDP. So it's very important for us that we can act as Europe unitedly, and we can boost up our military industry, send a strong signal to our military industry that we see military industry as a part of our economics. But it's very important that Europe can boost up defense spending overall the Europe, and 2% is minimum, because we as Latvians, we're spending 2.45%, and for all the European states, maybe the issue and the situation is not the same, but we need more flexibility. We need the flexibility in our budget spending and defense issues, because we see a good proposals for von der Leyen, but we see it's just one step. We need more steps going forward, and we see really it's a good opportunity for Ukraine to get peace, but through strength. Without strength, there will be no long-lasting peace. And it's good for all Europeans if the peace in Europe could be, which we can see it will be long, not just for a short time. Without strength, Ukraine will be forced to start peace negotiations. We all Europeans understand what does it mean if Russia will just rearm themselves, and then after some years they can step again to some other countries.
What about Hungary?
I believe Hungary is always making their own proposals, but there should be countries who want to provide more for Ukraine as well, for ourselves as Europeans, and we have to find a solution for that.
The rearmament, how quickly should the money now be mobilized for artists numbers just like years?
I believe money should be mobilized very soon enough, and those funds which are provided as loans are really a good point. By European is one part, but we'll see, because there is no elaborated explanation how all the money could be used. So I'm waiting for Commissioner to show us and to explain how the money can be used, because for Baltic states we really need to go very fast forward, because we are frontline countries and we are already now spending a lot of our own budget for defending European border, because we are European eastern border as we are NATO border. So it means nationally we cannot do all what is needed for all of Europe. We need to do it collectively. So thank you.
How can the transatlantic relations be fixed?
I believe there always should be a diplomacy, and that's a situation where diplomacy should be enforced, and for all of us it's better if there can be negotiations, not just language of strength. And our transatlantic partners are very important to us, so we need to find a way how we can negotiate. Thank you.
Sorry, one quick question. Would you accept French nuclear arms on your territory?
We have not decided about that, and it just happened that there has been an announcement from President Macron, and it needs time to decide and probably to have some discussions in our country as well, because it's something new. But we see as an opportunity to discuss, but it's really too soon to give some real answers to that question. So thank you. Ukraine?
For me, the most important thing now is to be very frank, to rearm Europe, and I don't think we have a lot of time. So rearming Europe, spent on defense and deterrence, that's the most important message, and at the same time, of course, continue to support Ukraine, because we want peace in Europe, and it cannot be done without a sustainable peace forward when it comes to Ukraine.
What do you think about French nuclear protection for Europe?
Well, I think we have to discuss everything now. So all good ideas around the table has to be a part of our discussion.
Prime Minister, President Trump this week once again mentioned Greenland and how he wants to get Greenland. What's your response?
I don't have further comments on that issue. I have answered it several times.
Politics.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to welcome today here President Zelensky. Dear Volodymyr, you are always bienvenue, always very welcome here to Brussels. Today the Council, it's a very important moment to build on European security. As you remember, 1 month ago we have a very important brainstorming, but now we are here today to take decisions and to deliver. First of all, I would like to thank the European Commission to come so soon with concrete proposals that give the opportunity for us to take concrete decisions, to increase our spending capacity, to spending better, to build our own capabilities. Of course, the security and defense of Europe is not separated of Ukraine security and defense. A stronger European defense, it boosts Ukrainian defense, and a stronger capacity for Ukraine defense is also very important to boost our own defense. That's why, because we are here to support Ukraine for achieve a comprehensive, just and lasting peace. And dear Volodymyr, we are with you since day one. We'll continue with you now, and we will continue in the future. In the eventual peace negotiations, when we decided that is coming the right moment to negotiate, and most important, in the future as a member state of the European Union. Then, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So, thank you very much, dear Antonio, for convening this extraordinary council. In extraordinary times, we need special measures. And thank you very much, Volodymyr, for coming here, because it's so important that we stand together. This is a watershed moment for Europe. And Ukraine, as part of our European family, it's also a watershed moment for Ukraine. Europe faces a clear and present danger, and therefore Europe has to be able to protect itself, to defend itself, as we have to put Ukraine in a position to protect itself and to push for a lasting and just peace. We want a peace through strength. And this is the reason why I present today to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan. The Rearm Europe plan provides up to 800 billion euros for defense investment. It gives the member states fiscal space to invest in defense. It gives the member states possibility to invest in the Ukrainian defense industry or to procure military capabilities that go right away to Ukraine. So it is to the benefit of rearming Europe, rearming the European Union, but also arming Ukraine in its existential fight for its sovereignty and territorial integrity. So today, Volodymyr, thank you for coming. It's a very important moment to show that we stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes.
Thank you very much, dear Antonio, dear Ursula, and I want to thank all our European leaders, first of all, and for such signal, strong support. Discuss on strong support from the very beginning of the war, and what's been during all this period and last week. You stay with us, and of course from all the Ukrainians, from all our nations, big appreciation. We are very thankful that we are not alone, and these are not just words, we feel it. It's very important. You made a strong signal to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian warriors, to civilians, to all our families, and it's great that we are not alone. We feel it and we know it. Thank you so much for everything, and signals to increase our production, and signals to, with the new program, to increase the European security. That's, I think, the great decisions. Thank you again for the invitation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
for her assessment of what we have just heard and what we may well hear later on if the communique is released. And Siobhan, it's just clear from that short news conference, from these pictures of the three of them together, that Europe is standing full square behind Zelensky, behind Ukraine, looking to make Ukraine eventually a member of the EU.
Yeah, there's no question where the EU stands when it comes to supporting Ukraine, and that is directly at their side. I think what's really interesting is after that criticism from the White House last week to President Zelensky that he wasn't appreciative enough of US support, he really didn't miss a trick just then to say thanks to Europe. The whole of his speech was basically a thank you for standing by our side, for being with us from the beginning, for continuing to support us. We are happy that we are not alone. So really marked there in how close Ukraine is with the EU. And then from both of those EU chiefs, we heard really underlining the fact that this meeting will be looking at not just how Europe will boost its own defences, but how it will also help to support Ukraine going forward, that they will look at helping with a ceasefire when the time is right, so not being rushed into anything that could lead to an unjust peace, for example. And then, as you say, Ursula von der Leyen laying out this rearm Europe, saying this is a watershed moment for Europe, saying that members, if her plan goes through, will have access to around 800 billion euros to help them to rearm, to boost the arms industry and also to help Ukraine. But I think it's really interesting, as Sean was saying, none of that happens overnight. And there is, I guess from critics' point of view, a bit of a feeling that this war has been going on for 3 years. We've known for a good year that Donald Trump could be back in the White House. People had experience of him before. I feel like I've been talking for a good year about what will he do if he gets back in? Will he still support Ukraine? So some will say this is all coming a bit too slowly, but I guess on the other hand, at least it is coming, at least these talks are happening, at least it's being taken extremely seriously. But the problem with the EU is at times it's a dysfunctional family. So will they be able to get countries which traditionally lean more towards Moscow, like Hungary, to back these plans? That's the other problem. It isn't just let's all sign, have a happy picture and shake hands. This is about negotiations, and that's why today is so important for the EU not just to make these pledges, but to actually get them across the line.
Well, just on that final point then, is it clear, does this have to be unanimous of the EU 27 for Ursula von der Leyen to be able to unlock that funding? If Viktor Orban, for example, in Hungary says he's against it, if Robert Fico in Slovakia says he's against it, does that mean that the funding mechanism is unavailable?
So they haven't made that clear publicly at this stage. We have had situations in the past, for example, where they've done a majority, and then if Hungary, for example, hasn't gone along, they've sort of found a caveat, a way around it. I think they want everyone behind this, but we'll hear more as the day goes on that point. But it is an interesting one because, you know, if they get to this stage where they're saying it's a watershed moment and then Hungary blocks it, then it really is just, in a sense, for many will feel that this is empty words, that Europe really does need to move forward on this, and that, as Sean was saying, this is about unlocking funds so that member states can't say, well, we don't have the money to invest in our defence, that they do have access to that, and that they are all able to prioritise it. So this really is a crucial meeting, and we'll get more as it starts. We're expecting a meeting with Zelensky first at around lunchtime, him talking, and then more of the EU members really getting into the weeds of what they need to do, what people support, what they don't support, and then hopefully, I say, later today, some sort of announcement from this. But it is, as I said, a dysfunctional family, and it might be that these talks go late into the night. We just really don't know what's going to happen.
No, we've seen those EU talks go late into the night before, haven't we, Siobhan? But they will definitely want to have some kind of resolution, as you point out. They do not want this to seem as a talking shop when, as Ursula von der Leyen says, Europe is at a watershed moment. Siobhan, for now, thank you. Back with you, of course, throughout the day. Let's bring in our military analyst, Sean Bell. And you were name-checked a few times there by Siobhan for this exact point about the industrial base and whether or not you have all this money that you like, but if you can't give it to the factories and they can't produce the arms enough, it's not going to make much difference in the short term.
And that's the problem here, is that Russia has had a few years to spin its industrial capacity up. It's been devastated, for example, with tanks. It's lost a good proportion of its main battle tanks, but it's now invested in the facilities to actually start generating them in a significant number. That process takes years. You just can't suddenly, the way we used to procure weapons certainly in the UK, was we'd define a requirement, we'd find the spot of money, we'd take it out to competition, we'd buy 1,000 missiles, and then the company that provided them would stop producing them, so everything will become obsolete. So you can't suddenly quickly turn on that tap. A lot of these missiles are just not available. So you've got to design a new set, then you've got to go out to competition. All these things take time, and I was reflecting as they were talking there's some interesting priorities for not just the British government, but also European governments. We've been supporting Ukraine by reducing the size of our stockpiles. In other words, increasing the risk in Europe because we don't have enough weapons to look after ourselves in an effort to support President Zelenskyy. Now we've got this double whammy that not only has America appeared to be walking away from Ukraine, but also therefore makes Ukraine more vulnerable, and therefore the EU needs those weapons more than ever. So suddenly you've got fewer weapons than you wanted, and you're facing the potential of war of national survival. And I think one of the things that Sir Keir Starmer did the other day, very adeptly, was announce those 5,000 air defence missiles being made, the biggest order, 1.6 billion, from memory. And it was just to try to demonstrate that we've got a significant investment going to be required. And not only for your first priority is to refill those stockpiles, the second is our military is configured for wars of choice. It's been configured for 35 years for transporting our military to distant lands, supporting them in distant lands and bringing them home. All of a sudden now, configuring your military for wars of national survival, there are big capability gaps. There are huge questions about the size, the way you're configured, how your doctrine is all configured. And I think those are things that our Strategic Defence Review is clearly wrestling with. But it's not going to be a question of simply tinkering at the edges. It's going to be a fundamental change that's going to be required.
Yeah, Sean, is
Einen schönen guten Tag. Wir kommen heute in Europa zu einem sehr wichtigen Zeitpunkt zusammen. Wir müssen sicherstellen, dass die Ukraine weiter unterstützt wird. Das ist eine Aufgabe.
After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it was clear that Germany needed to look to spend more to rearm and to focus minds on not just the peace dividend, but also perhaps deterring any threat from Russia. Sean, let me push you a little bit more on the rearmament piece. You and I have spoken about this many times in the years since this war broke out, about the industrial complex and whether or not they can spin things up and we can get those weapons paid for and produced. What were the conversations like in the MOD for the past couple of years? I mean, surely they knew that they needed to do this eventually. Was there pressure on some of those companies to get this done? Because it's often talked about like a chicken and egg. If you don't get the orders, then the company can't do it, right? And is it literally that? There seems to be a failing at some point in that process.
Well, first of all, I left the military some time ago, so whilst I have still a form of access, I don't have my finger on the pulse of what's actually happening inside the Ministry of Defence main building today. What I can say, there's constantly been a wrestling about you configure your military to the threat that's out there. Now, throughout my time in the military, there were two driving threats. One of them was China, one of them was Russia. And big handfuls, it was America will look after China, we need to look after Russia. And so we configured our military accordingly. Now, there is a view, when this war was started back in February, that actually it would either be over in a heartbeat because Ukraine wasn't ready. And amazingly, Ukraine held out. They were spectacularly brave. The rest is a little bit of history. But there was also a view that from a national parochial perspective, the threat that Russia once posed clearly was no longer valid because Russia not only did not perform well, it may have the equipment, but it didn't have the military capability, and it wasn't able to convert that investment in hardware, tanks, ships and aircraft into battle-winning capability on the ground, and it lost a huge amount of equipment. Therefore, it was no longer the threat to our nation that it was at the start of the war. Now, if you play that long game through, there would have been politicians going, why do we therefore need to spin up and divert money from the health service, divert money from welfare, divert money from other international aid, when actually the driving threat has been significantly diminished as a result of this war. Now, that's a judgment.
It is.
And it's a difficult one for them to make.
And you rightly point out that you don't have your fingers in the pulse. Give us a sense on the other side of it then, on the big companies, the BAE Systems and others, who have the production lines are still in place. First of all, are they still there, the production lines that will be necessary to get this kind of weapons, these kind of weapons produced?
Depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about dumb weapons like artillery shells and bullets, there are constantly production lines going at about there. And then you've got to just literally you've got the supply of brass for the casings and the explosives, but they can still be produced in significant, and it's relatively simple to ramp those up. But let me choose an example of Storm Shadow missiles that we have donated to Ukraine and have proved spectacularly successful. The problem is those missiles are 30 years old. They were made as a batch and then stopped being made. Can you imagine what the technology is in those missiles? Imagine what your phone was like 30 years ago. And it would have been a completely different look about it. Technology has moved on so much, so you couldn't, even if you had the will, the people who have the expertise to rebuild those Storm Shadows, the components aren't made anymore. The chips are just not made, so you've literally got to almost start from scratch and rebuild them, and that's part of the challenge for some of the smart weapons. So I do think there's two different things here. One is bullets and artillery shells, which, yes, there's lots of efforts to try to ramp up production. The West has been trying to produce at least 1 million shells. America's provided a lot, and there are other areas that are now producing more. The smart weapons is the thing that Ukraine needs. It doesn't have the soldiers on the battlefield. A David versus Goliath battle, if they get drawn into an attritional battle, hand fighting, the big guy wins. If you can use smart weapons, that's how you breed your advantage. That's the weapons that Ukraine needs. That's why ATACMS, Storm Shadow, and all these high-tech weapons have been so decisive for Ukraine. But you need to continue the supply of those. That's where the problem lies.
How long does it take to get that supply up to a level, do you think? 5 years, 10 years? What's the sort of horizon on these things?
One of the devils in the procurement system is that, generally speaking, the military folk set a very high bar for the requirement. We want a Klingon death ray that can do everything. And industry goes, well, we could do that, but it'll take several years to do that. If you actually step down your requirement, and it's not such a wonder weapon, some of these things can be produced very quickly. The challenge, of course, is that it requires a huge investment in money. Is it going to be needed on the battlefield?
Sean, plenty more from you, of course, throughout the day. Really appreciate the analysis. Sean Bell there. Now, as those leaders are meeting in Brussels, 4 people have been killed and several others injured in a Russian airstrike on the Ukraine.
Deshalb ist es gut, wenn die Kommission jetzt Vorschläge macht, die auch die nächsten 1-2 Jahre helfen. Aber wir brauchen eine langfristige Anpassung des Regelwerks, um die Staaten selber in die Lage zu versetzen, dass sie die Spielräume haben für ihre langfristigen Investitionen in Verteidigung und Sicherheit.
Wären auch gemeinsame Schulden wie Eurobonds eine Option?
Die Position Deutschlands in dieser Frage ist traditionell bekannt und wird sich nicht sehr ändern.
Was Ihr Vorschlag für die transatlantischen Beziehungen?
Sind wir sehr weit weg von einem Frieden, gerade in der Ukraine, oder vielleicht erstmal Waffen? Oder brauchen wir noch mehr Zeit?
Es ist ganz wichtig, dass wir sicherstellen, dass die Ukraine nicht einen Diktatfrieden akzeptieren muss, sondern dass es um einen fairen, gerechten Frieden, der die Souveränität und Unabhängigkeit der Ukraine sicherstellt, geht. Deshalb also die konkreten Vorschläge dazu, dass die Waffen in der Luft und auf See erstmal schweigen sollen, dass die Energieinfrastruktur nicht weiter gefährdet wird und dass die Ausgangsbasis sein kann für Gefangenenaustausch, für die Rückführung von entführten Personen und dass damit dann auch die Basis gelegt werden kann für einen Waffenstillstand. Der muss aber die Bedingungen erfüllen, die ich eben schon gesagt habe. Eine starke ukrainische Armee auch in Friedenszeiten. Das wird unsere zentrale Aufgabe sein. Sie waren schon dran, da war jemand anders. Sie waren auch schon dran.
Herr Bundeskanzler, widersprechen Sie im Ernst, dass es zumindest Gespräche mit Großbritannien und Frankreich über eine nukleare Abschreckung?
Diese Gespräche gibt es immer und es bleibt aber trotzdem dabei, dass wir uns gemeinsam dem NATO-Konzept verpflichtet fühlen und das ist Ihnen bekannt und das ist auch im Interesse der gemeinsamen Sicherheit in Europa.
Herr Bundeskanzler, was sagen Sie zur Aussage von Friedrich Merz, whatever it takes, nachdem ein Wahlkampf etwas anderes gesagt hat?
Ich bin sehr froh darüber, dass jetzt ein Konsens darüber zu wachsen scheint. Ja, auch eine Zweidrittelmehrheit im Deutschen Bundestag benötigt, also verfassungsändernde Qualität hat, dass wir mehr Geld ausgeben müssen für die Förderung unserer Wirtschaft und für Verteidigung und dass das nicht auf Kosten des sozialen Zusammenhalts und der Modernisierung unseres Landes gehen darf. Diese Dinge sind nun Konsens. Das gefällt mir, denn schließlich habe ich die letzte Regierung beendet, weil es nicht möglich war, diesen Konsens durchzusetzen im Hinblick auf die notwendige Unterstützung der Ukraine. Also ein zunächst einmal fürs laufende Jahr viel kleinerer. Und ist auch meine klare Aussage in den politischen Debatten vor der Bundestagswahl gewesen. Wir brauchen genau das, was wir jetzt gerade tun.
Herr Bundeskanzler, Sie haben auf X gestern
Ich danke Ihnen allen für Ihre vielen Fragen. Schönen Dank.
So we have an important European Council today. First, we're going to discuss defense and what we can do to really boost our own defense. So all the options are on the table when it comes to financing of the defense, from grants to reallocation of the cohesion funds to also the change of fiscal rules. And I think this has been long pushed for. This is extremely important because we really need to invest more in defense. And second, of course, Ukraine. What more can we do to support Ukraine? We have initiative on the table. I hope that we reach a political agreement on the support for Ukraine, because we really need to make them stronger so that they are able to end this war on their terms, and therefore they need the European support for this. So we have today the decisions, politically, even if we fill the numbers in the March Council that comes in the end of March. So really looking forward that Europe shows unity and resolve on these very turbulent times.
Representative Mark Rubio didn't want to meet with you. What is your proposal to fix the transatlantic relations between the EU and the US administration?
We have been very long-term allies. We have many relations that are between us, and we definitely need to build on this. I think the administration also looks at us to be stronger. When Europe is stronger, then we are also, in their eyes, a stronger partner for them.
Chancellor Scholz said yesterday that the US should keep a leading role when it comes to peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Does it mean that Europe is not fit for this role anymore?
No, the war is going on in Europe, and this is a question of really peace and security in Europe. We need to be counted in when it comes to any kind of deals, when it comes to really ending the war and achieving a long-term peace. We know what is at stake here, and we also have on our side something to bring to the table. These discussions are ongoing. The implementation of any kind of deal, Europeans need to be on it.
How quickly can EU weapons now be mobilized and also
well, we are right now, making those decisions, and we need to do it quickly enough. We just don't have time. And there, yesterday apparently is what we need, but that's why the initiative that I've proposed has also two elements. Either you come in with the the weapons, ammunition that is needed, or with the funding to acquire the necessary weapons and ammunition elsewhere. So I think this is something that we need to do in a really fast track.
What about Hungary's blockade?
Yes, this is increasingly difficult, and that's why we have on the new initiatives also considered the coalition of the willing, so that one country can't block everybody else.
But what are the options today for Hungary to opt out of the Ukraine?
Well, I will not speak for Hungary. I mean, we are still striving for having the unity of 27 members. And if that's not possible, then, I mean, Hungary can speak for themselves.
How concerned are you after Trump decided to stop helping Ukrainians?
Of course, this is a dangerous gamble with Ukraine's future, and that's why we are here today and also discussing what more can we do on the European side. I think we shouldn't underestimate our own power when it comes to Europe, the economic power we have and the strength that we have here. So we should definitely use this strength that we have. Everybody wants peace. That is very clear. But the peace has to be the one that is not bringing more suffering to the Ukrainian people, but also to the Europeans. That's why we are discussing increasing our own defense. That's why we are discussing also increasing the support for Ukraine so that they can end the war on their terms. We are not discussing this today, but it's clear that we shouldn't, leave Western Balkans aside. What is happening in Western Balkans also has an effect on Europe. But yeah, today we are not going into those details. Thank you very much.
Can Europe act decisively?
ste? Hoću ja reći par riječi, pa onda ako ima neko pitanje. Može? Tu smo svi. Evo, uoči ovog posebnog sastanka Europskog vijeća najprije smo držali summit Europske pučke stranke, gdje smo čestitali budućem njemačkom kancelaru Friedrichu Merzu, čestitali budućem, odnosno novom austrijskom kancelaru gospodinu Stockeru, jačanje stranaka, obitelji europskih pučana i time se povećava broj nas koji sjedimo u vijeću za stolom 27 iz najjače europske političke grupacije. Današnji posebni sastanak logičan je nastavak svih ovih zbivanja u proteklih nekoliko tjedana, gdje ćemo razmotriti dvije teme. Prva je jačanje europske obrane, druga je situacija u Ukrajini. Naši su predstavnici, veleposlanici i suradnici radili na usuglašavanju zaključaka. Što se nas tiče, mislimo da je jedan i drugi tekst zaključaka za Hrvatsku prihvatljiv. Što se tiče Ukrajine, važan je signal potpore Ukrajini, narodu i državi koja je bila žrtva ruske agresije pune 3 godine. Biće s nama ovdje i osobno predsjednik Zelenskij, imat ćemo s njim ručak sada i razmotriti kako u ovim okolnostima pridonijeti pregovorima i o primirju, a onda u konačnici o pravom mirovnom planu. Hrvatska tu koja ima jedinstveno iskustvo među članicama Unije, koja je sama imala privremeno okupirane teritorije, dio tih teritorija vratila procesu mirne reintegracije, to je bilo Hrvatsko Podunavlje, može ponuditi svoja iskustva koja su značajna, koja su bila u konačnici jedina uspješna tog tipa u Europi nakon Drugog svjetskog rata. Ako usporedimo situaciju na Cipru, vidimo da se to primjerice nije dogodilo, prema tome imamo što zakazati, a što se tiče načina vođenja tih pregovora, tu imamo nekoliko tema. Prva je, ne može se govoriti o Ukrajini bez Ukrajine, ne može se tražiti konačno rješenje bez Europske unije. Konačno rješenje ne smije nagraditi Rusiju kao agresora. Ukrajina ne smije biti prisiljena na polukapitulaciju i gubitak svojih teritorija. Dosadašnja politika Zapada i Europske unije u ovom kontekstu i diplomatska i politička ne smije biti ponižena. To je okvir koji je stav, ja bih rekao, ne samo mene nego mnogih aktera ovdje, i tražit ćemo da se rješenja koja vode ka miru, ka primirju, nastave i sa adekvatnim mirovnim planom koji bi omogućio postupno da Ukrajina osigura suverenitet na svom teritoriju. Što se tiče pitanja obrane, ovdje je sasvim jasno da će sve države u idućim godinama ulagati puno više u obranu nego što je to bilo do sada. Hrvatska je, kao što znamo, dosegnula onaj NATO zavjet od 2%, plus od tih 2% ide 30% čak na modernizaciju. Mi smo kao vlada 2016. krenuli s obrambenim proračunom od oko 530-40 milijuna eura. On će 2027. biti skoro 2,67 milijardi eura, što znači da ćemo u našim mandatima, tad će to biti otprilike 10. 11. godina mandata, 5 puta povećati izdvajanja za obranu i za prelazak sa istočne na zapadnu tehnologiju. Ukoliko se novi zavjeti podignu na 3%, na 3,5%, Hrvatska sa svojim gospodarskim rastom, sa svojom ekonomskom snagom i fiskalnim kapacitetima moći će pratiti te zahtjeve i naša ulaganja su vidljiva. Novi višenamjenski borbeni avioni Rafali, novi tenkovi, Leopardi, novi višecjevni bacači raketa Hajmarsi, nova borbena vozila pješaštva Bradley i Patrije, Black Hawkovi, uskoro velika ulaganja u Hrvatsku ratnu mornaricu, daljnja ulaganja u protuzračnu obranu. Sve su to sustavi koji će pridonijeti sigurnosti zemlje i naših građana, dakle u našem nacionalnom interesu. 5 točaka koje je ponudila Ursula von der Leyen, dakle prva, poseban fond od 150 milijardi za zajedničke investicije u obranu, pozdravljamo. Druga točka koja omogućava fleksibilnost nacionalnu u smislu fiskalne discipline, a to je da se dio izdvajanja za obranu ne broji kao izdatak. Tu se treba to detaljizirati, ali i to je dobro jer na taj način imamo veću marginu ulaganja. Treći element, realokacije eventualne ili fleksibilni način korištenja redovitog sedmogodišnjeg proračuna, pa onda i dio koji se odnosi na ulaganja za obranu. Četvrti, bolje korištenje financijskih instrumenata i financijskih institucija poput Europske investicijske banke. Ja sam bio supotpisnik sa još 20 kolega da se Europska investicijska banka otvori ka financiranju projekata za obranu. I peti element, to je korištenje privatnog kapitala u kombinaciji s onim što radi država za ulaganje u obranu. Mislim da je to itekako dobar okvir. Što se tiče naših daljnjih aktivnosti, one će se nastaviti i krajem ožujka kada će komisija, ja se nadam, dovršiti svoju bijelu knjigu o obrani i gdje ćemo na dugoročni način sagledati kako da se jača strateška autonomija Europe, kako da se jača industrijski temelj, baza europske vojne industrije. Tu dakako vidimo i šansu i za hrvatsku vojnu industriju da participira u tome, da se jača, da više toga proizvodi na korist Hrvatske, ali i da budu, kao što već danas jesu brojne naše obrambene kompanije, one su sve izrazito izvozno orijentirane i mi ćemo ih u tome kao vlada podržavati. Evo, to je u najbitnijim crtama ono što će se danas zbivati.
Što očekujete od zaključaka o Ukrajini? Može li
Pa vidjet ćemo. Po ovome što sad shvaćamo, on je protiv, dakle njegova je optika preotvaranja strateške rasprave u vezi Ukrajine, nije na tragu ovoga što većina ostalih misli. Ukoliko ne bude konsenzusa, onda se, pretpostavljam, ide na B varijantu. B varijanta da zaključke koje smo dogovorili usvoji ili prihvati ili obznani predsjednik Europskog vijeća Costa u ime sebe, a uz potporu 26 ili 25, ne znam što će Slovačka napraviti, tako da ćemo vidjeti.
Manfred Weber nakon sastanka EPP-a kaže da je EPP dosta Orbana i da on mora razmisliti ko će biti dio europske obitelji. Dijelite li njegovo mišljenje?
Pa dobro, nismo nešto puno o tome razgovarali danas, ali mislim da to više refleksija ovih inicijativa u Europskom parlamentu. Mađarska je članica Europske unije, oni imaju oko ove teme bitno drukčiji stav nego većina nas od samog početka i tu u biti se sad samo malo možda je snažnije artikulira taj stav Mađarske nakon promjena u SAD-u. Međutim, o tome da li je neko članica ili ne, odlučuje se na jedan drugi način. Samo sekund. Da, recite.
Oko jačanja hrvatske obrambene industrije, možete razjasniti imali neki planovi oko tvornice streljiva?
Ima, dakle, vodimo mi konzultacije i naravno razgovaramo na razini vlade i ministarstva obrane, ministra Anušića, drugih koji su zaduženi za sigurnost, imaju puno znanja u toj domeni, i potpredsjednik Venbet, potpredsjednik Božinović. Smatramo da smo došli u fazu kada su određene hrvatske kompanije poput HS Produkta, Šestambuša, Orke, sjajne, one rade zaista izvanredne, kvalitetne proizvode koji su traženi od mnogih i jako dobro plasiraju svoje proizvode, da je sada u ovim okolnostima kada će ulaganje u obrambenu industriju postati veliki prioritet svih, dakle ovakav plan od 800 milijardi eura nismo vidjeli praktički možda ni u vremenu hladnog rata tako presudni trenutak, ali tako velika ulaganja su sasvim nova situacija, da se i u Hrvatskoj naprave napori kako smo primjerice imali tvornicu streljiva ili čak i neku drugu proizvodnju nastavno na iskustvo koje smo imali ranije. Dakle, na tome se radi, ali još je rano da govorimo detalje.
Zašto baš tvornica streljiva?
Pa zato što je to dosta bitno. Da bi jačali, zato što se pokazalo u ovoj krizi i agresiji Rusije prema Ukrajini da Europa nije bila u stanju proizvesti dovoljno streljiva da bi pomogla ukrajinskim potrebama, a namirila kamoli eventualne veće potrebe.
Je li jasno ko bi gradio tvornicu?
Nismo još u toj fazi, ima razgovora sa potencijalnim investitorima. Da, recite.
Kako to komentirate i kako će to utjecati?
Pa dobro, mi smo nastojali poslati umirujuće poruke prema Bosni i Hercegovini. Ja sam to komentirao proteklih dana nakon ove presude koja nije pravomoćna. Vidjeli smo reakciju institucija u dijelu Bosne i Hercegovine, dakle Republici Srpskoj. Hrvatska podržava cjelovitu Bosnu i Hercegovinu na koncepciji Dejtonskog sporazuma koji govori o jednoj državi, dva entiteta i tri ravnopravna konstitutivna naroda i naravno svim drugima koji žive u Bosni i Hercegovini. Smatramo da je sada vrijeme za vrlo mudro, razborito ponašanje svih čelnika, svih političkih stranaka i institucija za pokušaj da se nađe prostor za funkcionalnost. Ja pozdravljam da je Vijeće ministara predložilo proračun, pozdravljam donošenje određenih zakona koji su bili u konačnici kriteriji na europskom putu Bosne i Hercegovine. Znate koliko smo u ovo doba lani činili da se donese strateška odluka na razini Europskog vijeća o otvaranju pregovora. Sve ono što ide u tom smjeru Hrvatska podržava, sve ono što ide jačanju ravnopravnosti Hrvata kao konstitutivnog naroda Hrvatska podržava, sve ono što će omogućiti dijalog i funkcionalnost zemlje, izbjegavanje bilo kakvih tenzija Hrvatska podržava i tako ćemo se i ponašati uz poštovanje naravno suvereniteta, teritorijalnog integriteta i nastaviti ulogu zagovornika europskog puta Bosne i Hercegovine.
Čuli ste se sa predsjednikom i on je poslao priopćenje. Da li dobro shvaćamo da je on protiv potencijalnog budućeg paketa sankcija, da je protiv vojne pomoći?
Što se tiče sankcija, one će ići. Pa vidjeli ste u konačnici, imali smo i mi priopćenje i on priopćenje. Mi smo smatrali da u ovakvim okolnostima kada je tema i vanjska politika i sigurnosna pitanja i obrambena pitanja, da to je bio trenutak za čuti se, kao što sam rekao jučer u intervju.
Participă la ședința
Consiliul European extraordinar de peste 20 de minute, având un mandat care se bazează pe 3 premize. În primul rând, susținerea pentru creșterea rolului Europei în menținerea păcii pe continentul nostru. Asta înseamnă dezvoltarea pilonului european în NATO, în așa fel încât să aibă o greutate mai mare, și menținerea parteneriatului cu Statele Unite ale Americii pentru ca NATO să-și consolideze rolul de garant al păcii pe continentul nostru. A doua premisă este de susținere a Ucrainei, în așa fel încât până la încheierea unei păci și la încetarea focului să existe condiții pentru ca frontul să nu se rupă, pentru că susținerea Ucrainei este de fapt o susținere pentru o stabilitate la granițele țării noastre și indirect este o susținere pentru pacea țării noastre. În ultimul rând, susținerea pentru creșterea cheltuielilor de apărare, în așa fel încât, pe baza facilității care este propusă ca aceste cheltuieli să nu intre pe partea de deficit, să ne putem susține industria națională de apărare în așa fel încât să consolidăm și acest domeniu important. Vă mulțumesc și alte declarații le voi face după finalizare. Mulțumesc foarte mult!
Ja. Dat is een heel positief gesprek geweest met president Zelenskyy. Ik heb hem eerst en vooral namens onze nieuwe regering bevestigd dat wij Oekraïne blijven steunen met veel overtuiging. Dat alle programma's waar wij aan deelnemen, en dat zijn er nogal wat, dat we dat zullen blijven doen. Dat we dat ook in onze budgetten zullen voorzien die we naar het parlement gaan brengen. En dan hebben we een aantal concrete vragen van Oekraïne besproken waar misschien ons land een steentje kan toe bijdragen. Maar daar ga ik uiteraard publiek niet op in. Wij zullen de F-16's leveren. Daar is vertraging op doordat er vertraging is op de levering van de F-35 wegens technische problemen. Dus het schuift een beetje naar achter. Maar wat ik in sommige media heb gelezen, dat wij voor 2028 geen F-16's zouden leveren, dat wil ik toch logisch straffen. We zullen dat zo snel mogelijk doen. We zijn nu al bezig met het opleiden. We zijn bezig met het opleiden van piloten. Er zijn ook mechaniciens. Wij zullen voor reserveonderdelen zorgen. En ik sluit niet uit dat er dit jaar F-16's naar Kiev zullen gaan of naar Oekraïne zullen gaan. Maar dat zal dan eerder voor reserveonderdelen zijn. Maar dat wij volgend jaar ook toestellen zullen leveren die gevechtsklaar zijn.
Wat met de bevroren Russische tegoeden? Ons land speelt daar een belangrijke rol in. Zal daar ook gepraat worden? Natuurlijk neemt ze toe om die ook te gebruiken voor Oekraïne. Kijkt u daarnaar? Kan u die terug weerstaan?
Ik pleit voor grote voorzichtigheid als het gaat over die bevroren tegoeden. Ik heb soms de indruk dat niet iedereen echt weet waarover het dan gaat en wat de aard is van die gelden en wie de uiteindelijke eigenaar is van die gelden. Op dit moment is dat eigenlijk een kip die ook gouden eieren legt. Hè. Die windfall profits die gaan naar Oekraïne. Zolang dat zo kan blijven, denk ik, is dat prima. Landen die nu al pleiten voor het in beslag nemen van die gelden, die moeten goed beseffen welke economische risico's ze nemen, wie uiteindelijk de benadeelde partij zal zijn van dat soort operaties en welke juridische risico's daarmee gepaard gaan. Hè. Dit is iets wat echt de financiële wereldorde kan schokken. Dus daar mag je niet te lichtvaardig overgaan. Ik ga daarover de nodige informatie ook brengen, denk ik, naar de Europese hoofdsteden en pleit er alleszins voor grote voorzichtigheid. Maar ik begrijp uiteraard de bezorgdheid dat die gelden in de uiteindelijke deal die met Oekraïne moet gemaakt worden, dat het een factor is die nog op de tafel moet kunnen komen.
Op het moment gebruikt ons land ook de interesten, de taxering of de interesten op kunnen we zonder Oekraïne, kunnen we zonder Oekraïne blijven steunen?
We zullen Oekraïne sowieso blijven steunen. Hè. Je hebt de windfall profits die al dienen als de borg voor de lening van de G7. Dat gaat over enorm veel geld waar Oekraïne van kan profiteren. Dus ook om die reden denk ik dat het belangrijk is dat je daar voorzichtig mee omgaat. En dan heb je natuurlijk de vennootschapsbelasting die België daarop heeft. Dat is eigenlijk een meevaller voor de begroting. Maar ook daarvoor financieren wij eigenlijk heel veel zaken die Oekraïne te goede komen. Maar ik ga niet uitweiden over hoe een vredesdeal er moet uitzien. Voor mij is het belangrijkste dat er een deal komt die Oekraïne ook aanvaardt en waar Europa aan de tafel zit. Het is meestal zo dat als je niet aan de tafel is, de Raad en de volgende erg belangrijk. Als Europa nu de rug niet recht en zichzelf aan die tafel knokt, dan zullen wij een wereldorde moeten ondergaan waarin wij uiteindelijk de belangrijke beslissingen niet meer meenemen en moeten ondergaan. Dat begint met Oekraïne, maar dat zal daar niet eindigen. Oekraïne is niet ver van ons bed. Als het daar slecht afloopt, dat betekent dat agressie wordt beloond en dat je dus in een nieuwe wereldorde wakker wordt waar bullies, brutale mensen die met macht, might over right functioneren, dat die het gelijk gaan halen. En dan kom je terug in de wereldorde zoals we die tot het midden van de 20e eeuw hebben gekend. Wel, wij hebben heel wat huiswerk te doen. Op dit moment moet je gewoon erkennen, wij zijn niet alleen een klein land, wij zijn ook een buitengewoon slechte leerling binnen de NAVO en dus ook binnen Europa. En we krijgen dus eigenlijk een tik op de vingers die we verdienen. Hè. Als je je lidgeld niet betaalt van een club, dan moet je niet verwachten dat je naar het clubhuis mag komen. Dat is het signaal dat we nu al gekregen hebben. En ik zal uiteraard de komende weken met de regering bekijken hoe we zo snel mogelijk terug aan die tafel kunnen zitten met opgeheven hoofd. Want daar gaan zitten en grote woorden spreken terwijl je geen euro hebt om die woorden te bakken, ja, dat mag je eigenlijk niet verwachten. En je kan het eigenlijk zelfs niet kwalijk nemen.
Schat je op dit moment de Verenigde Staten als een bond?
De Verenigde Staten blijft historisch onze belangrijkste bondgenoot binnen de NAVO. Dat verandert niet door één president. Maar je mag er wel niet van wegkijken dat de bocht die Amerika heeft genomen met de rug naar Europa en het aangezicht naar de Pacifische Oceaan en naar China, dat geen bocht is die met Trump begonnen is. Hè. Het is Obama die zich als eerste Pacific President heeft gepresenteerd. Trump doet dat nu met een ongeziene brutaliteit. Het is zeer on-Europees als je naar kijkt. Hè. Je knippert echt met de ogen wat hij allemaal doet, wat hij allemaal zegt, hoe die mensen behandelt. Het is ook echt een bully. Dat kan je niet na.
Massivement, c'est le whatever it takes, quoi qu'il en coûte, c'est aussi la ligne de la Belgique.
Oui, ce sera la ligne de la Belgique que je vais défendre aussi. On est un mauvais élève, on doit le reconnaître. On fait beaucoup, trop peu. On n'est même plus invité à certaines tables parce qu'on est un mauvais élève. Donc je vais présenter au gouvernement aussi vite que possible des plans pour aller aux 2% de dépenses pour la défense plus vite qu'on l'avait prévu. On l'avait prévu pour 2029, mais je crains que ce sera beaucoup trop tard et qu'on s'est réveillé dans un monde où l'Europe doit malheureusement se réarmer.
Yes, yes, of course.